It's always great to be able to bring you all together. Day in, day out, I speak to many great like-minded people like yourselves, and I think it's powerful to be able to create a space where you can meet and share knowledge, ask questions, get support, whatever it may be. And yeah, an increasing topic I found myself talking about with many people in my network is this recurring issue that many organizations face, which is obviously making sure that engineering teams and business always are talking the same language and figuring out how to build this bridge between the two. Something that's absolutely crucial to create the best products possible, and no matter where you are. And so yeah, I'm looking forward to discussing this today and finding out how we can break down the wall between agile teams and a business. So without no further ado, I'd obviously like to introduce you all to my moderator this evening, Niels. Niels, I'll pass over to you.
Yeah, thanks. Well, a short introduction. I am constantly switching between product-minded jobs to technical again. So I have a technical background. I used to be a developer. So either I am IT lead or something with a strong preferences for business processes, or I'm like product owner, chief product owner with a technical background. So for me, it's a really natural space to be, but I have a really hard time in kind of reproducing these situations in where you really feel like you're building the right stuff, but also on the right way, in the right way. Yeah, so this is a really interesting topic. I think we could have a quick introduction round.
My name's Andrew. It's quite funny the way that you're describing your background, because I think that's pretty similar. My end as well.
Oh, cool, man. Okay.
Technical background, but being sitting on the product side very often, various types of products, but also on the business side. So sitting between, but on different sides. So definitely can very much relate to the topics. I'm pretty sure we're going to have a very interesting discussion, and I'm very, very interested to hear what you guys have been experiencing. So yeah, looking forward to the conversation.
I'm also, for the last 6 years, I've been working in product. I'm currently head of product. And I think a lot of people that end up in product have a somewhat diverse background of a little bit of tech and a little bit of UX and a little bit of business. Because it kind of takes a little bit of each of those to be able to work in product. And really be able to speak to the developers as well as speak to the business and translate from one to the other. So yeah, I think it's a natural fit, and it's similar for me. I also have somewhat of a technical background. And
I am not in product, but I kind of have the similar experience as you. So I have quite a technical background. I mean, starting from the education, and I have also PhD in computer science, cross mathematical subject, also with software development at the start. But then slowly I was shifting towards some more management or advisory roles. So now I'm in advisory. So I think I have seen different worlds. I have been talking with different people, working closely also with sales executives. So I think it's really interesting to be there in the middle and to be able to see how different people from different departments think, their mindset, which is quite different, I would say.
Yeah,
I think such a role is quite important to have in every product development, and that's the role of the product, actually. I mean, product person, to be able to talk different languages and to connect these different skills together.
My background, similar to a lot of people. I mean, I come from a software engineering background, but even before that, my background was quite varied. I've done lots of different jobs, including my own business, running a fashion design company, actually.
Wow, that's
and
cool.
moved into software engineering. While I've been there, I helped run a cooperative web agency, doing projects and doing most of the client management within that. I worked for The Guardian for a long time as an engineering manager, tech lead, and then engineering manager. And a huge part of that role was breaking down the silos between our editorial teams and our software development teams. In the last couple of years, I've been working for a couple of different health tech startups with a big focus on as well. Where I work at the moment, where actually the company is majority employs clinicians. So being able to break down those barriers between the commercial sides of the business, the clinical side of the business, and the software engineering organization to make sure that we're actually all achieving the same outcomes and moving in the same direction is definitely what I consider a big part of my role here.
My name is Paul. I have a background in product management, actually, and I've been moving over to technology for the last 4 or 5 years, I guess. I'm currently CTO at a company called Mijn Domein. So I'm actually, well, it feels like a bit like 2 careers, right? But I'm either a really tech-interested product person or a bit of a business-minded CTO. So yeah, I'm kind of in the middle as well, right? So looking forward to the discussion.
Oh, cool, man. Yeah, but you did it the other way around. You started in product and
yeah, definitely. Yeah, and product
cool.
more and more had to do with digital transformation, right? So that's how I actually went into tech, where actually a lot of my interests are, right? So.
Hi everyone, I'm Claudia.
Hi,
and
Claudia.
I started in tech as software engineer for a very long time, and I usually was at the receiving end of the business requirements, right? So on the other end of what we need to deliver. And been leading many teams, and even in my current job, which is engineering director at Maersk, I need to ensure that there is the balance between the business outcomes that we want to achieve and the reliability of the system that we build and how we build it. So there's always like how do we negotiate the waters in between the two, right? Usually what the tech organization wants and what the product wants. But yeah, I can see both sides, the need of both sides. I can see it, but yeah, there's a lot of how do you say, a big gap to bridge in between the two.
My name is Niels. My start in software development career was in QE engineer. So I had the first couple of years experience of lack of understanding what the requirements were. With that experience, I went to a product ownership for around 8-9 years. So getting that experience of how important requirements were and try to get, the two differences by technical people and people indeed stakeholders that are big visionary, high ideas, but no concrete steps to the goal. How to get that, how can you translate that? And now I'm a director of engineering, so I'm more like overseeing the development department rather than really working on the requirements.
I'm Maurizio. I've been working as a software engineer for many years, and I also as an entrepreneur, and I've been working also on the product side. As an entrepreneur, I was interested in the product side, of course. So I would say that this big separation between tech and business was very visible at the beginning of the 2000 year. There was a very big separation, in my opinion. And today, finally, some kind of product management discipline is emerging, and it is the glue between to make everything agile. And in my opinion, today there is no real distinction. And I also see that product development and so software engineering, it's moving thanks also to the agile movement, is moving really fast toward the business side. So today, engineers understand that there is some business to implement, to build. And so now I see that all these disciplines are converging, actually. And that's awesome. 20 years ago, it was impossible. There was a really big chasm. And today it's different.
Oh, it depends. It depends on the place you enter.
Of course. I'm currently CTO and in this company, and I manage both product and engineering.
Oh, okay.
And I see that this is actually happening over and over in the industry.
Yeah, I think so.
When there is a chief product officer, it's becoming a kind of anti-pattern. There's something that you cannot really separate these two aspects, in my opinion. But on the same side, it's also difficult to find CTOs that are also very deep into product. So
yeah, or the way. I have a friend and she is starting a new job as CTPO, and it would mean you have a lot of mandate and influence, and yeah, I trust her to do this. Really cool.
I also see it a lot that this need for merging and becoming the CTPO roles. And I have to say, initially I was a little bit skeptical about this concept because usually there's like a healthy conflict of interest between the CTO and the CPO.
Yeah.
And you're kind of merging it, and especially if it's the CTO. And that I think there's a risk that you run into some of the issues that were described at the beginning, that you're building the more technical stuff because it's interesting rather than focusing on the business needs.
I believe that I'm wondering today if there is still this separation, this friction between the two roles. I believe that if there is friction, one of the two is not really understanding what is his or her goal.
I agree.
There's a difference between friction and good counterbalances and making sure that different viewpoints are heard. Do you know? Because I think that's the joy of working in a cross-functional team with different specialties. Is everyone should have empathy with the user. Everyone should understand the business value that we're trying to generate and understand the business goals and drive that through. Yet, having the different specialties, different roles does provide a good counterbalance. It's not in terms of making sure that we're making balanced and good decisions going forward as a team at each of the different levels.
What I also see is there is always a challenge between going fast and make business value available to customers and stabilize the product and make it maintainable and keep it healthy, right? So I see that also there is always a balance that needs to be there. And I see that business normally tries to tend to go, oh, let's prototype, let's go quickly, and then move to the next feature before stabilizing the new capability that just has been built.
It depends to an extent on the type of products that you're building, right? Whether you're building something that's internal, maybe a little bit smaller versus something that's pretty large commercial that needs to go out to a bunch of customers globally. And depending on what you're doing, and you will have, for example, the product role becomes quite complex, right? So I might have built a number of global cloud-based products in the past. And as the product guy, I mean, you're dealing with everything, as you guys probably know, from marketing to finance to legal to the whole shebang. And if you don't have, whether you call it a CTO, whatever you want to call it, but if you don't have a counterpart that you obviously need to work with in a constructive manner, that takes care of all of the things that you just talked about, including the maintainability of the product, I would have probably found it quite difficult to manage that all myself. So I think it really depends a little bit also on the type of environment that you're operating in. But I agree absolutely with what Natalie just said. I mean, at the end of the day, the key thing is that these different roles work together effectively and balance themselves out, right? I mean, a healthy discussion is important. Disagreements sometimes are important as well, as long as you can have an open and constructive discussion with each other about it.
Isn't that the answer for me? I'm getting a bit older, but the answer for most problems I run into is let's have a meaningful conversation about this. Right. And it seems to be, I imagine it's quite annoying for people, but this is the basis. But I've witnessed another strange phenomenon the last 5 years, and that is where we tend to where we're looking for all these technical that we always tend to start with the technical innovation, and we do not start with the business innovation. So a lot of companies, most enterprises, we are doing stuff with cloud or looking to Netflix or Amazon or anything technical should be is picked up really fast, just for the sake of it. It seems. I don't know. Have you witnessed that, or have you any experience with that?
Well, I do see from the development side, right, is that is basically an area of interest for a lot of people in the team, right? So new stuff
we need it.
their eyes.
Yeah,
we need it,
it's
right?
there.
This
We
is
need it.
awesome,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And it's not directed from this is a strategy. This is what we want to do, and then we need something.
Yeah.
No, it's the other way around. Right? This is awesome. We want to build this.
Yeah.
And
We need
make
speed.
a business case why we need this.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
that definitely happens. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen this a lot the last couple of years.
I'm Gavin. I'm in the car. I was in a
Hi, Gavin.
traffic jam.
Yeah.
So I'm a CTO at True. So to add to this, I think it's also the role of the CTO to basically make sure that you basically make sure that there's no or not a lot of tech debt, but also make decisions about using new technology or not. I mean, I've been in a lot of situations where I had developer teams where I just told them, okay, just make a prototype. And then after the prototype, explain them, we're not going to use WebSockets because yes, you like this new technology, but from a networking point of view, like in our monitoring, things need to change a lot. So why do we actually need this? And then, well, yeah, one calling also works, right? Sure. So, but yeah, that's always, I think, a responsibility of the CTO or of the CTPO to make those decisions, but also to educate your team, right?
Yeah, I totally agree, but too many times I miss this kind of leadership and being able to, maybe from a CTO perspective, but the layer underneath is often not capable of seeing these things, and they will be led by engineering or the best architect or the loudest shouting person.
I think it's really important that there is some way of having stakeholders really explaining clearly their vision and their goals, and then have a proper interaction with those stakeholders to explain what they really need or want to have before going to technical solutions, right? So first see what you need to have, and once you understand really what you need, then see, okay, what's required to achieve that goal. I think that's one of the pitfalls, that if you don't have sufficient preparation steps of building that vision into more detailed goals, milestones, then you will see that the development team get lost and just tries to build something, and then you get stuck in these kind of loops most of the times.
I fully agree. So I think it should start with the why, so with a clear and strong vision. Which shouldn't be just a statement that everybody forgets about that, but it should really, become part of the mindset of the people. What are the clear goals? And then everybody should stick to those goals. The technology teams should think themselves about how to do things. And this is where technology comes into play. The technology is the how. So they should think, what do they need to do? How should they implement things to meet the business goals?
I do agree with what's said, and very much agree that indeed the why should be clear. But for product owner or person in product, sometimes it's really difficult to understand or to know whether developers are sort of over engineering something or making use of technology that really isn't necessary. It's, of course, we try as product people, but it's always not possible.
That's the reason why you need strong engineering leadership.
Yes,
right?
Completely agree with that.
Yeah, and non-functional.
But it also works both ways. I mean, I've also seen like a lot of times where engineers came up with something that was not like related from a business question or a business need, but was from a technology point of view very interesting and actually led to new business. So it works both ways. But
I think that
you need to take it under control, right? You cannot have developers just run around doing cool stuff all day, because in the end of the day, we also need to make money. We have a business to run.
Exactly. The way that we think about it here is that there's the capabilities that we need to bring, because we all innovate, right? But that the product-led squads really are incremental innovation and incrementally led, and it is led by business goals and business outcomes. But we do have R&D as well, and R&D is a lot more experimental, where we don't know what we're going to accomplish yet. And that's okay, because that's where, but making sure that it's differentiated is actually really important. I want to go back to what you said, Marina, about making sure the why is really clear, because I completely 100% agree with you. And then the other piece of the puzzle to me in making these product-led squads understand their value and actually make good decisions themselves in terms of engineers is building that empathy with the users and building that awareness of what
what as a business we're trying to achieve, and having that in their mind always, because if they understand really their impact of their work, it helps that, like, it enables them to make good decisions and make those trade-off discussions themselves. And you end up just getting very, very pragmatic engineers who are able to balance, you know, good technical decisions with quick delivery, because it isn't about sacrificing quality and for velocity or velocity for quality. You can't sacrifice either. They are completely entwined.
I agree, but I mean, I think that is it requires quite a lot of time and effort and leadership from your end as well to ensure that you actually give them that context. I mean, Arnoud just sort of mentioned that, I think, as well. If getting the business view and sharing that on a regular basis with the development team, but also the feedback from what they're getting, but also giving them both the short term as well as some of the longer term views. So, I mean, you can take the concrete architecture discussions. There's a very different view or a very different decision I will take if you only give me what you're trying to do like the next couple of months versus you also give me the longer term outlook. I may take completely different decisions. So I think it's key that as a leader in this role, you actually make those efforts to share with the team short term but also longer term visions, and you take them along with that feedback cycle, or you will definitely face challenges.
I've been working with companies where, so I had one situation when they really had very ambitious goals set for 1 year. And then it was really interesting to see how people think in a very creative way, different options, different alternatives, how to structure the teams, I mean, what to build, what not to build. So, you know, when you have this ambitious goal, then you're really forced to think how to make the product as lean as possible, such that to meet the desired goal in the in the limited time that you have. But of course, not to forget in this state the long-term vision, because sometimes, you know, if the deadline becomes a priority, especially if that's very ambitious deadline, then people tend to, you know, write unclean code and think about all kinds of unmaintainable solution such that to have something to work on short term, but then of course on long term the solution suffers. So you need to set clear goals, but also clear principles. What do you want to achieve, not only for the next year, but also for the time being, for the next couple of years, that the product should be scalable, sustainable, you know, all kinds of principles that you can think of, and this has to be clearly communicated with the team, and everybody should follow that.
Yeah, coming from an organization that has hundreds of developers, and to be truth, if we were to follow every developer wish, we will be in a mess, right? The approach that works for us is to always have a tech radar for 3 years, where we say the technologies that we support and the technologies that won't support. And to get onto the tech radar, you have to have a really good reason from a product perspective, aka we want to build a new product and it can only be done with this. So we set up some guardrails, right? It's not like free for all. It's more on, okay, these are the database technologies we support. And this is keeping in mind that we need to support these products for a very long time. We need to have maintainability, but we also need to be able to shift people around. And I'm coming from like very large teams, right? And if every team will do their own little thing, then you cannot have that. Then you have to hire developers for that particular part. So it's more a controlled way, right? But there is a way to bring new technologies on, but the level for that is you need to show that is really needed, and you need to have a plan on how do you get everybody on the same technology with the knowledge. So, you know, what is needed for everybody to learn it if we are introducing it, because you're going to have to be able to support it. But again, it really depends if you want to go that way. For a large organization, it makes sense. For maybe smaller organizations, it might be a little bit too much, how they say, top-down control coming in, right? So it really depends on the type of organization that you're working for.
I think it's healthy to think about your choices on forehand and see if the choices serve your business goals. And if they don't serve the business goals, we should stop wondering about them. And this is what I often miss, or the business goals are unclear and so this gives us a wide range of solutions, or we don't match them together. And how do you measure? Do you guys have experience with like the words vision and goal were mentioned? Are you familiar with validating your business goals then? Yeah.
Tell me more. I can tell you more on validating business goals. So for everything that we build, and this is true also for my previous at eBay Classifieds, what we used to do is you have to say, what do you hope to achieve with your product, right? And that is business goals, and you have to be able to measure it. And this is about killing your darlings, as we used to call it. If within the year time, that particular product that you launched, for example, didn't, so there were two areas. How do you test your prototype? How do you test your hypothesis? And let's say that you put it live, you continue to measure it. If it doesn't live up to the expectation, you can it. So you kill it. You don't continue. So cool. You don't continue maintaining something that is going to cost money in the long run, right?
Wow. Yeah.
So it was a continuous, and sometimes it's very hard, especially for product people, to kill their darlings and their project that maybe they work for an entire year. But it's becoming really necessary, because if you constantly sink money into stuff that doesn't bring you any money, then you're gonna lose. On the other side, we've done a lot of, let's say, prototyping MVPs, and you have to have a really clear hypothesis defined. And what we usually tested and still test is the riskiest assumptions. For example, I'll give you an example. You want to create a new product that you say, we're going to target X and Y people, and they will be able to sell or buy very easily with no hassle within a day their car. I'm just giving you an example, right? You just put it and somebody for sure will buy it. But you might think that the riskiest assumption would have been on the technology side, or how we're going to do it. Actually, the riskiest assumption that we tested is if we can even target those people that would have been the users, right? That's your riskiest hypothesis. It's not the hypothesis. Sometimes we go in, the hypothesis should be that we make money. No, we can make the money, but the hypothesis should be differently, right?
Is it targeted for one certain assumption?
Because we know that if we can target them, right, we can bring in the money. That's not a risky part.
And you can build up on that hypothesis.
I think it's a good question, Niels, whether companies are validating their business goals. And to be honest, and I think all of us will probably recognize that it's very often not done, more often than it is done. And we've been trying it a lot, and doing some of the things that Claudia are describing. But I think it is an exception when companies are doing this really well. I think quite often the business cases up front, they promise the world just to get the idea sold, and then later on, those sort of hypotheses of the huge intake in conversion rate or something, they aren't really measured as well, or they're difficult to measure, or I've seen it a lot.
We often say we are going to do it, and we write them down in many, and then if we want to spend time from a technical perspective making then often it's like, no, don't worry, it's like unit testing, we do it later when we have the time. You know what happened with that approach.
And another challenge I want to add of killing your darlings, at least that's my experience with enterprise products, that I really try to push product management to say, hey, we need to kill something, we need to reduce support on certain areas so that we can spend that time in something new or improve other items. But it's really difficult for the sales engineers or for product management to go to customers, maybe only one customer is maybe still using that feature or that functionality.
Maybe.
And they don't dare to say no, to say we stop support, we deprecate it. And I really have a difficulty convincing to move forward, right, with that kind of things.
Yeah, that's definitely in the enterprise, right? That's a big challenge. And for in the consumer market, maybe even the lower end of the business market, that's a bit more easy, right? Because you have maybe a lot of customers are using it, but
Yeah.
It's a bit easier than the big bank that is using it, or the big defense contractor, you name it.
Yeah.
I definitely recognize that.
Except for Bunk, the bank.
Except for Bank, they just do it.
Oh man, they like they like deal with it, man. They gave us a new app. Like, I don't know. Most people were questioning if it was really deliberate or it was just the test version, but no, this is it. Yeah, it was a harsh. Well, it can be done. I think the difficulty you mentioned, Niels. I have this discussion often. I say, yeah, there's one customer is using it. We think, because we're not measuring it, so it's there, and we call that feature gluttony. So it's this application getting bigger and bigger, and sometimes it's not even movable anymore or maintainable.
Isn't that the main thing that is holding us back, right? Because I think everybody recognizes the value of evaluating your business case after the fact, right? But then you come actually into the area, for instance, we planned this big conversion hike. So how do you actually single out the impact of your big project on the right? So it's really hard to do in practice. That's why we usually don't get around to it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's really complex.
It is, right? So it helps if you think about it beforehand. So I have this big project, and how am I actually going to falsify this project, or maybe pop open the champagne? So if you think of it beforehand, it's probably easier, but still a lot of times you're into something that has a lot of influence from different sides.
So one thing we start to do is, for example, integrating Pendo with our product, so that we can at least see what people are using and not using, and hopefully that makes the discussion a bit easier to convince to say no to some or deprecate some of the functionality. But sadly, it takes some time for us at least to do that.
What was that?
Basic facts can help a lot, right? User adoption, how many times do you use it? Definitely.
Was it Pando or Pendo?
Pendo, I think you said.
Pendo, yeah. So that's basically a capability where you can see activities on the browser. Yeah, that one. So it's basically who is doing what, and you can put customer journeys, and you can do tagging, so you can see when and which customer, how they are using your product. And hopefully, but it's a lot of work to tag and put all the labels in and make sure that you really understand what the customer is doing in your system. If it's an easy portal, easy website, it's not a problem. We have really complicated capabilities, so that's one of the challenges we at least have to understand what they are doing.
I agree with the discussion. So I see that quite often with many companies who are building a product and then customizing the product for specific customers. And because of not being able to say no to customers, because of having this product vision and thinking about how to scale the product, they are, when we measure at the end the code base of the whole product, you see that there is just one small layer of the shared functionality, and then custom code for one customer, another customer for another customer. And with that case, actually, of course, you make your customer happy, but you're not leveraging the product as a product. You're simply building 10 customers, 10 different solutions.
I once had a customer, they had a SaaS solution. It turned out to be 23 instances of the same product with as like, I wanted to talk about test automation, but where to start?
It's interesting hearing everyone talk about this, because it's one of the things he said in my note that made me think was a good part of every strategy is defining, I think of product strategy, company strategy, is defining what you're not doing. So that should enable you to actually define what you are actually should be saying no to your customers.
Exactly.
Yeah, make it clear and explicit instead of just squeezing stuff in. Do you guys think, like from a business perspective, is it really important to clearly state non-functionals to developers?
Non-functionals, you said?
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Like I expect this to be used by 4 people, so.
I think it's super important, especially if you want to go quick and people are building a prototype. If you don't have a clear picture of what the end goal is, maybe they need to scrap it because the infrastructure they built it upon was not suited for the requirements later on.
Yeah, but it might be okay for now, right?
Yeah, it will work for the first 5 customers, but then if you want to scale to 1,000 customers, maybe it will collapse, right? So that's one of the.
I call this a luxury problem.
Yeah, I think this is, in my opinion, I think that you don't even need to make a distinction between functional or non-functional. I mean, requirement is a requirement, and we really need to think about non-functional should just be part of the solution, and that's something that
I agree. Yeah,
don't see that, and especially when it's when a company is outsourcing the development to another company. Typically, I see the problem of the supplier company, for example, they don't have any automated testing, and then if we ask them why don't you have that, well, nobody asks us for that.
Yeah. You think it should be pretty normal by 2021, right? Yeah,
exactly.
no.
So I think it's a big risk for companies who are led by more business-oriented people. They would just hire a very, let's say, a very good supplier or development company, and they think that everything will just magically happen.
Yeah.
That they will the product will have quality per se, but they should have their responsibility also to set the right expectations and to
True.
have it with the
You
supplier.
cannot blame them, the other party, always. Gavin, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to ask a question. So this is really sort of like stereo prototyping, but I've seen a lot within product that people are very well spoken, like some even very extrovert, where engineering side usually is more introverted, like has difficulty explaining themselves. And I've seen this over and over again. Of course, there's a lot of good exceptions there, right? But how do you deal, or have you suggestions how to improve this communication style? I mean, if you already look at naming, you have like a product owner, and then there's an engineering lead, and then owner and lead. I mean, who has the last say, the owner or the lead, right? And I think this is always a very sort of like a tension. And I've seen this happen very often where engineers afterwards say, yeah, we tried to tell them, but yeah, we couldn't convince them. And I've seen this so many times. So I'm wondering how you guys are dealing with this.
It depends on the subject. For me, I really like to make those things explicitly in a company. If it's about code quality, so nobody has a saying in it except the IT team. And sometimes it gets a bit. Now I have this situation. It's also a bit strange because of their interpretation of what is DevOps. But on the other hand, it should be clear that I think it's my personal, we should serve business goals. So anything we need to do to provide the business the proper infra and tooling, we should be able to deliver ourselves. But again, I don't know what kind of cases you refer to.
I think it's a really interesting point Gavin made, right? And I think it actually helps a lot if you're conscious of this, right? So some people are just basically better in convincing or vocalizing stuff than others. But if you're actually aware of that some of the more silent people actually have a lot of knowledge, but maybe don't speak up that often. You can, if you're aware of it, you can actually invite them to talk, right? So there are a few simple things you can do to actually make sure that you connect a bit more. But it starts with being aware of the fact that this could actually hinder you in the long run.
I agree with you, Paul. I mean, I think that's absolutely key, but it depends, again, I think it depends on the types of environments that you're in. I mean, I've had a situation recently where I was working on a particular engagement where you had an executive who was had sort of a vision as to where he wanted to go, was willing to pour money into it, and you had an engineering team, an outsourced provider actually, that was supposed to deliver, but there was absolutely nobody in the middle who was performing, well, I guess what we sort of refer to now as the CTPO type of role. And then all of a sudden you can get into a situation where things literally get lost in translation, and you end up spending a ton of money and not getting the results. So then all of a sudden the challenge becomes, how do you explain to that kind of a group of people as to how they actually need to build a product? You have people that have never actually built a product, are not familiar with software, have got a rough idea as to where they want to go, and chuck it over the fence, and then are surprised why the supplier ends up spending 3 times as much time, because they keep on coming back with new ideas. And you know what happens, right? The engineer goes like, well, that's not what you told me last time, but I can do that, and off we go. So I think building the right team and the right team structure that can also support the kind of conversation that we're trying to have is absolutely essential.
Gavin, one thing that has worked well in my last organization is we provided a framework for how to have some of these conversations, which helped engineers and or just not business-minded people to help to argue why something was important. I'll put into why something was important to the business. So we had different criteria, like for example, for a lot of tech health work, for example, it could be if we think the payback period is within 6 months, that's a lot easier to justify why we should do this work now. And so we introduced these types of language and actually created a framework for how we would talk about it, measure it, for both like adding value to our customers, adding value to other business goals, depending on what's relevant, adding value from a long-term vision versus short-term, and then a cost, and then payback period in relation to tech health.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting solution.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've also seen some other techniques, like instead of standard brainstorming session when you hear just 2-3 people out of 10 people always talking and they're convincing the others, you can go towards another process, like leaving like 5-10 minutes for everyone to think about the question and then to put the answers on a paper, things like that. I mean, something to allow space and time for everyone to think and to give their opinion.
Are you guys using Scrum Masters also to improve these type of processes?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
If you look at the traditional development team, I think the Scrum Master is the first one that's actually being left out, right?
Right.
Because we can do the process ourselves, right? But I actually
Sometimes,
sometimes I actually find a good Scrum Master can really prove their value, right? Especially in these kinds of situations where you basically need to communicate better.
Yeah, I think it's the Scrum Master's task to note these things, that these are happening, and come up with solutions and help the team to improve on that.
These I now work with this liberating structures dude, and there's many interesting types of communication they have in this tool set. It can be really beneficial for these kind of situations. I don't know, you guys have heard of this liberating structures?
No.
It's it's not the all one size fits all solution, of course, but they have they squashes longer meetings with longer discussions, often in a really nice way, and everybody gets a saying, and everybody gets to listen to the others. I did not really invest much time because I just hop along with the guy, but it seems for some situations it could be really a nice set of tools.
Some of the classical issues that Andrew was referring to earlier of people ending up building the wrong stuff, I think we've all seen it, but I do think that working in a somewhat agile way does really help to prevent this from happening. And the better the company is aware that working in an agile way is useful, the more likely you are not ending up in that situation.
Yeah.
But I also think what is important is that you also make sure that you clearly state that you give empowerment to people, help coach them, and also have a lot of communication. Because if there is somebody that really wants to speak out and maybe it doesn't dare because he's insecure or doesn't really know if it's, you need to sometimes make sure that that person gets the opportunity to really interact, and sometimes you need to find it out and make sure that that person grows into go and do that communication as well, right? So I think maybe it's not directly to the problem, but I think if you make sure that you grow the people that you have, make sure that you get all the opportunity out of them that they are capable of doing, you get a way better team and a way better synergy, and that grows over time if you keep nourishing that.
You might have heard about the book The Sprint. I think that they explain quite some interesting techniques there.
I was curious whether or not we are all really using Agile to the fullest, because Agile also is a way for us to be aware of the market trends and switch at any moment. Like, let's say that you're building something for a month or 2 months, but then something else become important, and then you have to switch focus and just leave the other one, but you still have some gain out of whatever you've built, right? It's not complete waste. But I'm just wondering whether or not we are actually doing that, because a lot of times it feels like it's all or nothing, right? Rather than actually getting the gain early in the process of what you're building, so that you are able to say, we're stopping this because look, our competitors are doing Y and we need to switch really fast. So are we using Agile in a way like that? I'm just curious.
I think that we should define what Agile is, because I've been
there's the
starting
Agile Manifesto, right?
Yeah, but when I signed the Agile Manifesto, I think that in the following 20 years, there's been many different interpretations. So I see a lot of companies and teams following some kind of Agile process. Today, Scrum is everywhere, but very rarely we see Scrum used the real way, how it is intended. And I believe that if you are using a process like Scrum, you need to be agile from the business to the last line of code. And it is most of the times very difficult for product management to have a very good evolutionary approach to product design, and understanding and evolving, understanding the value. What is the requirement today could be different tomorrow. And it is also different, very difficult for engineers also to understand this process. So sometimes engineers want to build the code that lasts for 20 years. And in my teams, I always say that write code and think that you are going to change it next week, because next week is going to be another sprint, and every sprint you are allowed to change entirely your product, because maybe you have to deliver different things. And this is why we are doing evolutionary architectures, because there is not something that you start defining today for a business need in 6 months could not be there. Because the really hard part in most cases, unless you are doing really very cutting edge technology, but in most business cases, the hard part is the product, understanding what is really needed, what is going to be successful. And technology, today we have so many tools to build quickly and good quality products. But I think the most important part is the mindset on both sides. And when the product work well, so today being a product manager is really difficult. And it is really difficult to build a product management team, because it's a new discipline. It's like switching from managing software products from waterfall to an extremely agile. It is a completely different mindset. Same thing has to do with the product side. Before we were expecting that, okay, you are business, so you know exactly in 2 years when we finish the product, exactly how many users we're going to have and how much we are going to have of revenues, right? No, it's not. You should have the crystal ball for that. So that means that the two sides are not really two sides. They are completely intertwined and they have to work together. They are one thing. And this is probably the reason why today we have a CTPO.
You know, we talk about this gap, right? And now while you're talking, I was thinking, the whole reason I was starting to first help product owners and then train product owners, because we were then Scrum teams, there were only 2 sentences for a product owner. I think like, make sure the backlog is ordered or something. Nothing. It is the most crucial part of our whole system. it tells us what to do, when to do, and what. 2 rules: make sure your user stories, be aware as a persona, blah blah blah. Make sure our 3 sentences, they need to be in order. That's it. No help. So this is maybe it's the most explicit example of the gap between business and IT. This whole new way we found is like, yeah, it's how you say, it's for me, it was really I was really missing that, a bit more guidance there.
I think then that whole project would have gone really bad, because I strongly believe you fail as a leader if you fail to motivate people and to explain the why and what needs to be done, right? I think if you fail to do that and get people on board on the product and get them the domain knowledge, then I'm not sure what exactly you're going to deliver. But that means you're not bought into the product as well.
No.
So then I'm not seeing it going. Just...
No, but it was more in the beginning when we started it. This was this new way of working that would, help us bridge the gap. But we had to bridge the gap ourselves, which is no problem. But it was a really IT team motivated kind of work.
One point back to are we really agile? So I've always experienced in enterprise software development, and the biggest challenge I have is getting quick prototypes to customers, have customers really use that new functionality and give feedback. And that loop is either non-existent or too slow, because then the team is done with the functionality and move to the next feature, next project before the feedback is coming in. And I think true agile is you build something, somebody tries it out and say, well, this is great, but that's not so good. And then you adjust your backlog, adjust your priorities, and then make the product better that way. In the fixed time window you have to build the best you can, right? I think that's the biggest gap I have with working agile, personally.
I kind of I agree, and I'm really glad you went back to the subject matter, because it's this is, I think, a really key thing. It's like we should be striving for agile principles. So this is where it's like, it's not about following, it's not just, you don't have to follow Scrum to be agile.
No.
That's not the point of what agile is. You don't have to have product owners to be agile. Product owner it's just a role. It's one part of where an iteration of agile. But if you go back to the agile principles, it's just about how to get those quick feedback cycles and iterative work. And it's all about delivering incremental value to your customers. So how you do that is so dependent on the organization that you work and the people that you work with. And I can see a bit what your point, Niels, moderator Niels, about how it feels a lot one way sometimes. But the way that I think about it is that technology is the thing that is rapidly changing all the time. And where in technology, within technology organization, like the technology aspect of the organization should be the enabler of the business goals. So if we're not taking the business on the journey with us, then it's us who are failing to understand. So I do think it is the technology organization's responsibility to embed Agile within the organization. And understand the business goals, and then bring people on the journey of how we need. And it's hard, right? Because it is so dependent on where you work and who you're working with. And so what works at one place, it might not work in another, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think to add to that, Reg, I think I think I heard you say it's the technology's job to embed Agile in the business. I would add that it's actually the business's role as well, right? Because we actually have that as a challenge, right? That we try to work agile within the technology department, but actually we encounter our stakeholders, right? Be it product management, marketing, or what have you. If you don't work agile together, then it doesn't really work that well, right? You can't say, I have product owners, I have Scrum teams, so now we work agile as a company. That's just not true, right? So that's basically an ongoing discussion we have. But right, so what is actually agile, and how do we embed it for everyone within the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the gap we're talking about.
Definitely, yeah.
Agile is just a theoretical framework, but then in practice, of course, you need to adapt that based on your situation. And Agile says fast feedback loop. So go to the customer as fast as possible. But yeah, we all know that in reality, that's not always the best decision.
Yeah, it really depends on your organization and the type of thing you're doing at that moment.
The domain, the industry, the customer, your people, everything plays a role.
My experience is if something goes bad and there's an escalation and a customer needs an answer right now, then Agile works perfect, right? Then the customer is willing to prototype, test, and work closely with you to give the feedback you need to get the solution. But if it's just new capabilities and the customer is not directly asking for it, then it's a different story, right?
Yeah.
What I noticed over time is that like a lot of people tend to only believe in Agile. And for me, Agile is just one management methodology. I mean, there are projects where Waterfall actually does make a lot more sense than Agile. And also, for example, when you're doing hardcore research and development and you don't have a product yet and you don't have like a customer even, then Agile also doesn't make any sense. And what I noticed is that a lot of people just focus only on doing Agile, while you should actually look at, okay, what are we going to do with the team, and what is the problem that we're trying to solve? And often, especially when you have a product, Agile does make sense, right? Because there are a lot of unknowns, and in that sense, especially the iterative approach from Agile works very well. But it's not always the magic answer to everything.
That is so true.
I think the difference for me is the difference between the discovery, when you try to discover something, and the delivery. Sometimes you have delivery projects, you just need to deliver, right? So that's it. Whatever or not, you use Agile because you want to deliver it in small chunks. The final question I always ask is, how fast do I want to know I failed, either on a delivery or on a discovery project, right? On a discovery project, I need to involve the customer early on because I want to know I'm failing early on. On a delivery, I would use Agile because then I will know that I fail in my delivery early on, instead of waiting for 3 months before I sometimes ask for, like, where are we? Where are we now? You know?
What do you think of this?
What do you think of this? You know, after 3 months.
I made that mistake.
But it doesn't mean that it cannot be done with Waterfall. I mean, I've done before Waterfall, and it went also very well, right? It was just more rigid, right? So it depends, when do you ask the right question.
So if there are not that many unknowns and upfront everything is already clear, which sometimes, for example, happens in compliancy, right? If you have from a compliancy side, everything is already known, and how we're going to implement it, like, then sometimes other methodologies make a lot more sense. And I think that both from a product, but also from an engineering point of view, we should also look at those situations and, hey, is actually Agile the right way to go or not? And I've seen teams actually fail by using Agile. Which is very interesting.
Whole companies are just pushing it first Agile and now DevOps because it makes sense. For sometimes it just doesn't make sense.
But DevOps is cool, and DevSec is even cooler.
And DevSec, secure. I don't know anything else in between ops. No. It is terrible sometimes.
Like cloud is another example. Everybody talks about cloud, and companies do feel the pressure that we also need to move. But then if you move, or if you do Agile, or if you move to cloud, you really need to know why are you doing that and what is your business benefit. And also, are you ready to do that? It's not only put your system on cloud. You really need to have the right architecture.
I currently work as CTO for True.nl, which is a managed hosting provider, and we both offer like services in cloud and Azure and stuff like this. But we also have our own data centers and a lot of co-location and things like this. And I've seen it time over time that people think, oh, let's move to the cloud, and then I'll start a discussion. Okay, let's look at your architecture. Doesn't make any sense. So let's first start with that. And then people think, yeah, but the cloud is cheaper. And then we calculate it. It's like, okay, it's 4 times more expensive to do it in the cloud. And
but
yes, you have the benefit of scalability and scaling up, but also scaling down, right? But you need a certain level of maturity, and that's what we're currently doing with a lot of customers of ours, is that we're trying to teach them to gain sort of that level of maturity that you need to be actually successful in the cloud. But also scaling and things with Kubernetes and stuff like this. I mean, it's not easy, right? Also, the concepts are not easy. But there's usually a lot of legacy that needs to be dealt with before you can even take advantage of it.
if you don't deal with that effectively certainly as an organization that has got a decent amount of legacy, you can get stuck between the two, which is the worst place to be. You got half of it in the cloud, the other part's the legacy. You don't have the skills to really operate and take things to the cloud, and you may get stuck in hell.
But
so
it's also very human to wanting to scale and think like, yeah, there's like the golden mountain or whatever. But in reality, I haven't seen that many customers that really need to scale. I mean, for example, e-commerce Black Friday. Yes, I mean, one of our customers is Molly, who does payment transactions right in the Netherlands. And yes, for them, we need to prepare a lot of stuff before Black Friday. Yes, and then we need scale. But for most businesses, do they actually really need that level of scale? I mean, hopefully one day, yes, but in reality,
unless you need multiple regions, I would say stay away from cloud, because that's gonna be the place where you sink all your funds. Trust me. Ask me how I know. So,
how do you know?
I also been there.
Yeah. This is what I meant, like this technical innovation. Sometimes we prefer it to do it because it's cloud, it sounds sexy. Now the data, everybody's inspired by data is the new oil. Just ask yourself, what piece of the data do we need, and start working with that before you have to create data lakes and stuff in the cloud. And then we also need to do something with blockchain because it sounds so, useful. And so I feel the responsibility to protect the business sometimes from IT in like explaining them like what does this really do for you, and often they're
as a technologist, I can say that one of the reasons why a lot of people want to go to the cloud, because it forces you to think about how do you stay on top of your technology changes. So how do you do upgrades? How do you not stay on the same old stuff that you've been for forever? How do you upgrade for security? How do you upgrade for stuff? So in a way, the perception is that the cloud will force you to think about it and to solve it, because cloud providers will always force you to update your operating system on time. You'll always force you to patch your security holes and so on. So in the past, let's say whenever one of my engineering team said, oh, we need to update, all our virtual machines to the latest Linux OS because of patching. And then how long is that going to take you? This much. And it's usually always put on the back burner, right? But now technologists say, well, now we're going to have an extra person pushing, which is our cloud provider from the cloud, to push for this change. So I think I'm offering a different view from a technologist point of view, why so many want the cloud. Because security, and ransomware attacks and all this stuff are so much in the forefront right now. If you're looking at all these companies that have been hacked and have been under pressure, right? That it becomes clear that you do need to have a process in place for upgrades and for patching and for everything, right? And it is easier, let's put it this way, on cloud like Google Cloud or Amazon. It's easier to do.
But often it's really sad to see the same crappy application, but then the disappointment for most business people, like it's the same thing we used to have, but now what happened? It's exactly the same.
I think that's where a bit of educating of the purpose. So always starting with the why and making sure that's aligned across the board. That isn't just within the technology organization. It's that has to be understood much wider. Because there are so many reasons why you want to go to the cloud. Like if you're an international company or going international, and depending on what the data regulations are with the data you hold, for example, it's really easy to make arguments of why you should or shouldn't go towards the cloud that aren't technology based, but are business decisions.
Thank you everyone for coming along this evening. I hope you've all found it valuable in some way or another. It's really great to bring you all together, and I really appreciate it. I hope you have a great evening, and thank you, Niels, for moderating as well.